God's chosen ones. It's your time. Eternal wealth awaits. What if the wealth you've been chasing your entire life was actually pointing you towards something far larger than money? And tonight, you're finally being shown what that actually is. What if your time doesn't mean a lottery ticket, a sudden windfall, or luck finally turning in your favor, but something far more permanent, something that can never be taken from you, the way money always eventually can? I want you to actually hear this clearly tonight, because what's being offered isn't the fragile, temporary version of wealth you've been anxiously pursuing. It's something eternal, and it's genuinely, finally your time to receive it. You've probably spent years chasing financial security, watching the number in your bank account with a kind of anxious vigilance, believing that once it finally reached a certain threshold, you'd finally feel safe, finally feel settled, finally stop carrying that low-grade dread that's followed you through every paycheck, every bill, every unexpected expense that set you back further than you'd hoped. And even in the moments you've had more, that dread rarely actually disappeared the way you assumed it would. Have you spent years chasing a financial threshold that you believed would finally bring lasting peace, only to discover that peace never actually arrived the way you expected? Why earthly wealth was never designed to provide the you've been seeking from it. Here's something worth understanding clearly. Earthly wealth, no matter how much you accumulate, was never actually designed to provide the kind of deep, lasting security your soul has genuinely been seeking. It can be lost through circumstances entirely outside your control, diminished through inflation, taken through unexpected crisis, and even when it remains fully intact, it doesn't touch the deeper ache that drove you to pursue it in the first place. You've been asking money to do a job it was never actually capable of doing. Have you been asking financial security to provide a kind of deep peace that money, by its very nature, was never actually capable of delivering? Why eternal wealth operates by a completely different set of rules. Here's something worth understanding about what's actually being offered tonight. Eternal wealth doesn't follow the same fragile, unpredictable rules that govern earthly finances. It can't be lost through market crashes, stolen through theft, or diminished through circumstances outside your control. It's built on something permanent, something that remains fully secure, regardless of what happens in your bank account, your career, or your material circumstances. Can you imagine a form of wealth that remains completely secure, regardless of any external circumstance that might otherwise threaten it? Why this eternal wealth includes a peace that money has never actually given you. Here's something worth considering honestly. Think about the moments in your life you felt genuinely, deeply at peace. Were those moments actually connected to how much money you had at the time? Or were they connected to something else entirely? Genuine connection, genuine purpose. A settled sense that you were exactly where you were meant to be. That peace, the kind money has never actually delivered, even in your wealthiest moments, is a core part of what eternal wealth genuinely includes. Can you recall a moment of genuine, deep peace in your life that had nothing actually to do with how much money you had at the time? If this is landing somewhere real in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 2 goes even deeper into exactly what this eternal wealth actually consists of. Why this wealth isn't reserved for someday. It's a variable starting right now. Here's something worth understanding clearly about the timing of what's being offered. This isn't wealth reserved exclusively for some distant future, something you can only access after death. disconnected entirely from your actual, present life. It begins now, in this exact season, regardless of your current financial circumstances, shaping how you experience today, tomorrow, and every ordinary day still ahead of you in this life. Have you assumed eternal wealth was something reserved entirely for the future, disconnected from your actual, present, everyday life right now? Why being chosen for this doesn't uric your crank financials to change first? Here's something worth releasing tonight. The belief that you need to achieve a certain level of financial success first, before you're actually qualified to receive this deeper, eternal wealth. That belief has it completely backward. This eternal wealth is available to you exactly as you currently are, regardless of your bank balance, your debt, your financial struggles, or your current circumstances. It was never conditional on earthly financial achievement in the first place. Have you been waiting to feel qualified for genuine spiritual richness until your financial circumstances improved first, when it was never actually conditional on that improvement? Why this wealth actually changes how you relate to your actual money too. Here's something worth understanding about the practical impact this deeper wealth has on your everyday financial life. Once genuinely received, it actually transforms your relationship with your actual earthly money too, releasing the anxious grip, the scarcity-driven fear, the desperate need for more that's probably characterized your financial decisions for years. You start making decisions from security rather than fear, generosity rather than hoarding, peace rather than anxious calculation. How might your actual, everyday financial decisions change if you made them from genuine security rather than anxious fear? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because Part 2 continues exploring exactly how this eternal wealth transforms your relationship with money. Why this wealth is specifically described as belonging to those chosen for it. Here's something worth understanding about why this message speaks specifically about being chosen rather than simply available to anyone who wants it. This isn't suggesting exclusivity in the sense of limited availability. It's suggesting genuine, specific invitation meant directly for you, tonight, in this exact moment of your life, rather than a generic message meant for someone else entirely. You are specifically being invited to receive this. Can you receive this as a specific, personal invitation meant directly for you tonight, rather than generic content meant for someone else? Truth for tonight. The wealth you've been chasing, anxious and exhausted, was always pointing towards something far more permanent than money could ever actually provide. Eternal wealth, available starting right now, regardless of your current financial circumstances, offers genuine peace, genuine security, and genuine transformation in how you relate to everything, including your actual earthly finances. This isn't wealth reserved for someday. It's genuinely, specifically, your time to receive it tonight. If you fully received this eternal wealth tonight, rather than continuing to anxiously chase earthly security alone, how would that change the way you move through tomorrow? You've spent years chasing a version of wealth that was never actually capable of giving you the peace you were seeking from it. Tonight, you're being invited to receive something far more permanent, genuinely available right now, regardless of your current financial circumstances. This is only part 1. Part 2 goes deeper into exactly what this eternal wealth actually consists of and how it transforms your everyday life. If this message reached something real in you tonight, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exactly where this left off. It's your time. not for temporary wealth, for something that lasts forever. God's chosen ons, it's your time. Eternal wealth. We talked about why earthly wealth was never designed to give you the peace you've been chasing from it, and why eternal wealth operates by completely different, permanent rules. So today, let's go further. What does this eternal wealth actually consist of, specifically? Because understanding it exists is one thing. Knowing exactly what you're receiving and how to actually recognize it functioning in your life is where this becomes real, rather than simply comforting. Are you ready to see exactly what's being offered to you? Here's what tends to happen even after someone accepts, emotionally, that eternal wealth exists and matters more than earthly wealth. They still don't know what it actually looks like practically, day to day. Peace and security sound wonderful in theory, but without understanding their specific, tangible components, this entire concept can remain abstract, comforting to hear about, but difficult to actually locate or experience in your ordinary, everyday life. Have you accepted this idea emotionally, but still felt uncertain about what it actually looks like practically in your daily experience? Why the first component of this wealth is identity that doesn't depend on performance. Here's the first, foundational component worth understanding clearly. Eternal wealth includes a genuine, settled identity, knowing exactly who you are, completely secure, without that security depending on your latest achievement, your job title, your income level, or anyone else's approval. Most people build their entire sense of self on shifting, unstable ground, constantly performing to maintain a worth that feels perpetually at risk. Eternal wealth includes an identity that simply doesn't operate that way. Has your sense of identity been dependent on constant performance and achievement, rather than resting on something genuinely secure and unshakable? Why the second component is peace that doesn't tie on circumstances to recuperate first. Here's the second component worth understanding. Genuine, eternal peace doesn't wait for your circumstances to align perfectly before it becomes available to you. It's accessible in the middle of financial uncertainty, in the middle of health struggles, in the middle of relational difficulty, precisely because it was never actually rooted in circumstances cooperating in the first place. Most people postpone peace indefinitely, waiting for conditions that rarely, if ever, fully arrive. This wealth includes peace available right now, regardless of what's currently happening around you. Have you been postponing genuine peace, waiting for circumstances to align perfectly before allowing yourself to actually experience it? Why the third component is part that survives every setback. Here's the third component worth understanding. Genuine, eternal purpose remains intact, regardless of setbacks, failures, or seasons where your progress toward earthly goals stalls completely. Most people's sense of purpose is fragile, entirely dependent on continued forward momentum, collapsing into despair the moment circumstances genuinely stall or reverse. Eternal wealth includes purpose durable enough to survive real setbacks, remaining genuinely intact even when your external circumstances don't cooperate. Has your sense of purpose ever collapsed simply because your external circumstances hit a genuine prolonged setback? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 3 goes even deeper into exactly how to actually access these specific components daily. Why the fourth component is relationships, built on something deeper than tatwanmashan. Here's the fourth component worth understanding. Eternal wealth includes the capacity for relationships built on genuine love and connection, rather than transaction, mutual usefulness, or shifting circumstance. So many relationships, even long-lasting ones, are quietly built on unspoken transaction, maintained only as long as both people continue getting something specific out of the arrangement. This deeper wealth includes the capacity to build and sustain relationships rooted in something far more durable than that. Have your relationships been built more on unspoken transaction than on the kind of genuine, durable love this deeper wealth actually includes? Why the fifth concomitant is the ability to genuinely rest without guilt. Here's the fifth component worth understanding, one that surprises many people. Eternal wealth includes the genuine ability to rest fully, without the guilt or anxiety that typically accompanies stepping back from constant productivity. Most people have never actually experienced rest that doesn't carry an underlying current of guilt, worry about falling behind, or anxiety about what they should be accomplishing instead. This wealth includes rest as a genuine guilt-free gift rather than something you have to earn first through exhausting effort. Have you ever experienced genuine rest without an underlying current of guilt or anxiety accompanying it? Wise combatants build on each other rather than existing separately. Here's something worth understanding about how these five components actually function together. They're not five separate, disconnected gifts you receive individually. They build on each other. Secure identity making genuine peace possible. Genuine peace allowing durable purpose to remain intact through setbacks. Durable purpose enabling genuine, non-transactional relationships. And all of it together making authentic, guilt-free rest genuinely accessible in a way it never was before. Can you see how these five components actually build on and reinforce each other, rather than existing as separate, isolated gifts? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exploring exactly how to fully receive and sustain this complete picture of eternal wealth. Why you might already be experiencing fragments of this wealth without fully recognizing it. Here's something worth considering honestly tonight. It's likely that you've already experienced genuine fragments of this eternal wealth throughout your life. Moments of unshakable peace. Moments of genuine, unconditional love. Moments of purpose that somehow survived real setback, without ever fully connecting those specific experiences to this larger, complete picture. Recognizing those fragments now helps you understand this isn't entirely foreign to your life. It's simply being offered to you now in its fuller, more complete form. Can you identify a specific fragment of this eternal wealth you've already experienced in your own life, even if you never fully connected it to this larger picture before? Truth for today. Eternal wealth consists of secure identity, unshakable peace, durable purpose, genuine relationships, and authentic rest, all building on each other into a complete, integrated picture far richer than any earthly financial threshold could ever provide. You've likely already experienced fragments of this throughout your life, and tonight you're being invited to receive it fully, completely, in its entire integrated form. If you fully received all five components of this eternal wealth tonight, rather than continuing to experience only occasional fragments of it, how differently would your everyday life actually feel? You've learned something today that transforms this concept from abstract comfort into something specific and tangible. That eternal wealth consists of secure identity, unshakable peace, durable purpose, genuine relationships, and authentic rest, all building on each other into something far richer than earthly wealth could ever provide alone. Stay open to receiving this fully. Recognize the fragments you've already tasted, and reach for the complete picture. There's more ahead. Part 3 goes into exactly how to fully receive and sustain this complete picture of eternal wealth for the rest of your life. If this message is helping you see more clearly, subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exactly where this left off. This wealth is complete, integrated, and available. Now go receive all of it. God's chosen owns. It's your time. Eternal wealth awaits. What this wealth looks like on your worst financial day. What if everything this entire journey has taught you about eternal wealth was never actually meant to be tested on your good days, your comfortable days, your days when the bank account looks healthy and the bills are already paid, but was always meant for exactly one specific kind of day, the day the car breaks down and the rent is due and the phone rings with news you weren't prepared to hear all at once. What if tonight, instead of talking about wealth in the abstract, we walk directly into your actual worst financial day, the one you've already lived through, or the one you're quietly afraid is still coming, and discover exactly what this eternal wealth is actually capable of holding you through? This is the final part of this entire journey. Stay with me completely, because everything we've built across 6 parts has been leading toward this exact moment, the moment it either becomes real or it doesn't. You already know the day I'm talking about. Maybe you've already lived through it. That specific afternoon where you sat with the numbers in front of you, adding and subtracting in your head long after the calculator had already given you the answer, hoping somehow the math would come out different if you just looked at it one more time. Maybe it's still ahead of you, a fear sitting quietly in the back of your mind, a sense that no matter how carefully you plan, there's a version of financial collapse waiting somewhere in your future that you're genuinely afraid you won't survive emotionally, even if you technically survive it financially. Have you already lived through your worst financial day, or is there a specific version of it you're quietly afraid is still waiting for you somewhere ahead? Why this entire journey was never meant to be theory for someone else's hard day. Here's something worth being completely honest about tonight, because this final chapter deserves nothing less than complete honesty. Everything we've walked through across 6 parts, secure identity, unshakable peace, durable purpose, genuine relationships, authentic rest, the warning of the rich fool, the wisdom behind delay, the widow's 2 coins, all of it would remain nothing more than comforting theory, pleasant to hear but ultimately untested, if it never actually met the specific day your finances genuinely fall apart. Tonight, we make sure it's not theory anymore. Are you ready to actually test everything this journey has taught you against your most honest, most difficult financial fear? Why secure identity is the first thing that actually gets tested when the money disappears. Here's what happens first on that specific day, when the money genuinely disappears, when the account hits 0, when the safety net you'd been quietly counting on turns out to be thinner than you realized. Your identity gets tested immediately, because for most people, so much of who they believe themselves to be has been quietly built on financial competence, financial stability, the ability to provide, the ability to handle things. When the money disappears, if your identity was actually built on that foundation, you don't just lose money, you lose yourself alongside it. If your finances collapsed completely tomorrow, would your sense of who you actually are collapse right alongside them? Why secure identity, genuinely built, remains completely intact even when everything else falls apart. Here's what's actually different. On that same specific day, for someone who's genuinely built this eternal wealth this entire journey has been describing, the money can disappear completely, the account can hit zero, the safety net can prove thinner than expected, and their actual sense of who they are, their worth, their value, their fundamental identity remains completely, entirely untouched by any of it. That's not denial. That's not spiritual bypassing of genuine financial crisis. It's the specific, tested proof that identity was actually built on something the crisis couldn't reach in the first place. Can you imagine your own sense of identity remaining completely untouched, even while your financial circumstances genuinely fell apart around you? Why unshakable peace doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means the fear doesn't get the final word. Here's something worth clarifying honestly about what genuine peace actually looks like on this specific day, because this matters more than almost anything else in this entire journey. Unshakable peace doesn't mean you won't feel genuine fear, genuine stress, genuine anxiety about how you're going to pay for what needs to be paid for. It means underneath that very real, very human fear, there's a deeper current that doesn't get swept away by it. A settled knowing that survives even while the surface emotions are genuinely churning. Can you imagine holding both genuine fear about your circumstances and a deeper, unshaken peace underneath it, existing simultaneously, rather than one having to eliminate the other? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because more of these truths are waiting for whenever your own worst day actually arrives. Why durable per is what actually gets you out of bed the morning after. Here's what happens the morning after your worst financial day, once the initial shock has settled slightly, once you've had a night to sit with what's actually happened. Durable purpose is what actually gets you out of bed, what actually gives you a reason to keep moving forward, to keep making calls, to keep problem solving, rather than simply collapsing under the weight of what feels like complete devastation. If your entire sense of purpose was tied exclusively to your financial trajectory, that morning becomes nearly impossible to face. If your purpose runs deeper than that, it becomes the thing that actually carries you through it. What gives your life purpose that would remain genuinely intact, even on the specific morning after your worst possible financial day? Why genuine relationships reveal themselves most clearly exactly during this specific kind of crisis. Here's something worth understanding about what happens to your relationships, specifically on this day. Financial crisis has a way of revealing, with uncomfortable clarity, exactly which relationships in your life were built on genuine love, and which were quietly built on convenience, on your ability to contribute financially, on circumstances that this crisis has now genuinely disrupted. The relationships that remain, that show up, that offer genuine support without judgment during exactly this kind of difficulty, reveal themselves as the actual eternal wealth this journey has been describing all along. Which relationships in your life do you genuinely believe would remain steady, showing up for you on your specific worst financial day? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because there's more waiting for whenever your next chapter needs this kind of honest clarity about who's actually there for you. Why organic rest becomes the most counterintuitive, most necessary thing on this exact day. Here's something worth understanding about the fifth component, the one that feels most impossible to access on your worst financial day. Authentic rest. The ability to genuinely stop, genuinely breathe, genuinely trust that this crisis doesn't require every single moment of your consciousness to be consumed by anxious problem-solving, becomes simultaneously the hardest and most necessary thing available to you. Most people, on this exact day, believe rest is a luxury they can't afford. But rest, genuinely accessed even in crisis, is often exactly what restores the clarity needed to actually solve the problem well. Could you actually access genuine rest on your worst financial day, trusting that stepping back doesn't mean abandoning the problem, but actually restoring your capacity to solve it wisely? Why this worst day, when it comes, actually becomes the clearest proof that this entire journey was real. Here's something worth understanding as this entire 7-part series reaches its true, final conclusion. Your worst financial day, whenever it arrives, whether it's already happened or still waits somewhere ahead of you, becomes the exact moment where everything theoretical about eternal wealth either becomes gloriously, undeniably real, or reveals itself as something you only understood intellectually but never actually built. This entire journey has been preparing you specifically for that day, not to avoid it, but to walk through it completely differently than you ever could have without this foundation. If your worst financial day arrived tomorrow, would everything this journey has built in you actually hold? Or is there still work left to do in securing this foundation more deeply? Why God's chosen ones are specifically the people who survive this day differently than everyone else. Here's something worth understanding about what this specific title, God's Chosen Ones, has actually meant across this entire 7-part series. It was never suggesting you'd be spared from financial hardship entirely, exempted from ever facing your own version of this exact difficult day. It was describing the specific people who face that exact same day everyone eventually faces, but walk through it fundamentally differently, secure in identity, anchored in peace, driven by purpose, surrounded by genuine relationship, and capable of authentic rest, even while the actual financial circumstances remain genuinely, undeniably difficult. Dumb's understanding chosen this way, not exemption from hardship but transformation within it. Change how you understand everything this series has been offering you. The final truth. Your worst financial day, whenever it comes, will test everything this entire journey has built in you. Secure identity, unshakable peace, durable purpose, genuine relationships, authentic rest. And if you've genuinely engaged with everything across these 7 parts, actively building this foundation rather than simply enjoying the comfort of hearing about it, that day, however genuinely difficult, will not destroy you the way it might have destroyed the person you used to be. This is what eternal wealth was always actually for. Not your good days, your worst ones. If everything this entire journey has taught you was tested against your absolute worst financial day, are you finally ready to trust that it would genuinely hold? Series finale. You've walked through this entire 7-part journey, from discovering why earthly wealth was never designed to give lasting peace, through the 5 specific components of eternal wealth, through daily practices to sustain it, through the ancient warning of the rich fool, through the wisdom behind delay, through the widow's 2 coins revealing how genuine cost matters more than raw amount, and now, finally, tonight, understanding exactly what all of it actually looks like on your absolute worst financial day. That day, whenever it comes, will find you different than it would have found you before this journey began. Secure, anchored, purposeful, surrounded, rested even in crisis. That's what it means to be genuinely, eternally wealthy. If this series meant something real to you, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because there's always another message waiting for exactly the moment you need it most. And this channel isn't finished showing up for you yet. It's your time. Not because your worst day will never come, but because when it does, you'll finally be ready to walk through it completely differently.